أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين آمين رب العالمين. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة. صدق الله العلي العظيم وآمنا به. نوروا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. أحسنت. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected brothers and sisters, continuing from our discussion last night and a small recap to continue the bahath for today. And like yesterday before, respected brothers and sisters, I would like to thank each and every one of you for making time outside of your schedules to go above and beyond in terms of honoring Babul Hawaij Imam Mousa ibn Ja'far Al-Kathim salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh, seventh chosen successor of Rasulullah. And it is important that within your hearts, within your souls, you feel the grandeur of this participation in the majlis of Imam Al-Kathim alayhi salam. For you look at the Shia world at this point in time, and you look at the Shia inside of Iraq, the Shias gathering from all over the world inside of Iraq, within their millions preparing to go towards the blessed city of Kadhmain to perform the ziyarah of Imam Al-Kathim. Ziyarah millioniyah, the way they say. This ziyarah, this salutation and pledging your allegiance towards Imam Al-Kathim, which is a key from the many keys that you need in order to register yourself as one of those 313. A key from the many keys that is needed in order for you to pass the path, that sirat, on the day of judgment. That path which is sharper than the blade of a sword and finer than the strand of your hair. This ziyarah of Imam Al-Kathim is a key from the many keys that is needed in order for you to enter into heaven and paradise under the flag of Ahlul Bayt. For over these coming days, do not miss out on the opportunity of reciting the ziyarah of Imam Al-Kathim as is found within the books of Ad'iyah, Mafatihul Jinan and so on and so forth. And with your presence in this Husayniyah al-Mubarakah, you are part of this global movement that is reviving the dhikr of Imam Al-Kathim. And history tried its utmost to bury the legacy of Imam Al-Kathim, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a nation of pure-hearted men and women like yourselves who will ensure that the dhikr of Imam Al-Kathim is kept alive until the dhuhur of the awaited Imam. And with your presence and your contribution, you are a part of this grand legacy. And it is as if on this night and in the coming nights, Sahih, your bodies might be here in London, but your hearts are in Kadmain. And with your soul, it is as if you are circumambulating around the dhari of Maulana Imam Al-Kathim and Jawad. And you can smell the fragrance from the dhari. This is a tawfiq khasa from Imam Al-Kathim. And inshallah, I pray that by his sake, Babul Hawaij, each and every one of you who has come here today to honor him, may inshallah all your desires and all your supplications be fulfilled. And may Allah Azza wa Jal protect each and every one of you and your families from every type of su and bala. All of this with the barakat of Allah, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Tayyib, our bahath yesterday that we began in terms of understanding, we had a number of prerequisites. Understanding the glory and the grand status of Ahlul Bayt through the Quran. Number two, we said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within the Quran has revealed to us historical incidences of the past, not only for us to absorb lessons from them in order to make our present and our future better, but what we were able to establish yesterday is that within the stories of the Anbiya, within the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used those incidences as a reflection through which you can understand the Ahlul Bayt. The stories that are mentioned within the Quran are parables through which you can understand the grand status of Ahlul Bayt. And we began yesterday by analyzing verses from Surah Yousif. And we said within Surah Yousif, 100 odd verses. When you read through the Quran and when you travel on this journey with Nabi Yousif, it is as if you are able to get a reflection of the life of Imam Al-Kathim alayhi salam. Two individuals in history whose imprisonment has been unparalleled, has no parallel. The imprisonment of Nabi Allah Yousif, and you have the imprisonment of Maulana Babul Hawaij, Imam Mousa Al-Kathim. And so we began on this journey of looking at some of the similarities, this Fada'il Mushtarakah, and understanding the status of Imam Al-Kathim through the verses revealed in honor of Nabi Yousif. And we were able to establish yesterday that the position of Imam Mousa Al-Kathim is much more higher and much more elevated than that of Nabi Yousif. Do not be surprised that this is a concept which is well rooted and established within the Quran, that the position of Imamah is greater than the position of Nabuwah. There has never been an issue of ghulu in things like these outlined within the Quran. If we have an opportunity in the future, inshallah, we will establish that as well through the incident of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. In any case, we highlighted one from yesterday and we move on. We highlighted yesterday a couple of things. Number one, like the way Nabi Yousif was a victim of jealousy and hate by those who were his own family members. The same applies to Imam Mousa Al-Kathim, because the persecution that he faced at the hands of Bani Abbas were related to the Bani Hashim, in that their lineage from Abbas, the uncle of Rasulullah, cousins. Number one. And number two, we were able to establish yesterday that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces Nabi Yousif within the Quran as a distinguished individual, a distinguished representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who was granted with a particular type of knowledge. And that particular type of knowledge was that he was able to interpret dreams, the science of interpreting dreams. And then we came and we compared this with Ahlul Bayt. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces Ahlul Bayt within the Quran, He does not introduce them as being distinguished because they hold a certain type of ilm. Rather, they are distinguished because they have the ilm of everything within the realm of existence. وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ. As we mentioned yesterday, ittifaq between the Amma and the Khassa. This verse was revealed in honor of Amirul Mu'mineen, and the Imam Al-Kathim is the warith of Amirul Mu'mineen, the inheritor of the knowledge of Amirul Mu'mineen. This is where we stopped yesterday. Moving on, respected brothers and sisters, from the Quran, you find that again in regards to the similarities between Nabiullah Yousif and Maulana Imam Mousa ibn Ja'far Al-Kathim. We will take selected verses from Surah Al-Yousif for the time that we have, and inshallah it will set the standard for you, for your own reflections when you read within the Quran on how you can debate through the Quran when you yourself are reading. The first verse that we want to refer back to, verse number 33, Surah Al-Yousif. Yani, nothing is out of coincidence, huh? You are trying to understand the grandeur of Imam Al-Kathim, who was imprisoned, by looking at the life of Nabi Yousif, who was also imprisoned. And both these comparisons, you are drawing them from the Quran that is also called Surah Al-Yousif. This is not chance. Wisdom, the treasures of knowledge that are placed within the Quran in certain sequences. In any way, verse number 33. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قال رب السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه. When Zulaykha tried to attract and convince Nabi Yousif to engage in a relationship that was not halal, in a relationship that was forbidden. And the consequence of this was that because Yousif refused, and Zulaykha's husband, the Aziz of Misr, entered into the room, Qissa Mufassala, and perhaps most of you know it, and the shirt was torn and so on and so forth. Nabi Yousif says something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala conveys to us, where Nabi Yousif says, "Oh my Lord, for me to be imprisoned, for me to spend years in prison is more beloved to me than to disobey you, Ya Allah." Relationship haram, fornication, ajallakumullah, adultery. Nabi Yousif says, "Ya Allah, I would rather be imprisoned and confined than to disobey you." And within this, there are lessons of motivation for us in our own daily lives. The issue was very simple for Nabi Yousif about fulfilling his desire with someone who happens to be one of the most beautiful women that were there in Egypt. He would have fulfilled his desire and life would have gone on like normal. He would not have been subject to prison and the pangs and the tribulations of being imprisoned. But Nabi Yousif said, "For me, suffering in this world as a consequence over choosing sin is better for me. Thaqafa. This is a culture that needs to be ingrained within us. In our daily lives, there are many situations that we face on a daily basis. Each and every one of us, ya ahibba'i, from the time you open your eyes to the time that you go to bed, know and be sure 100% you were faced by multiple imtihanat by shaitan. You are subject to a number of tests every step of the day. In your business, at your work. Taban, I used to have a background in sales. And perhaps majority of the brothers or the sisters know that when you're living or when you're working in a corporate world, sales and marketing is absolutely important. And the way they say in slang, in our language over here, in order to be a good salesman, you need to be a good blagger. You need to be able to blag such that you can even sell a comb to a bald man. For enter as a salesman, enter within marketing, enter within your business. You are faced with choices on a daily basis that you lie, commit a sin against Allah Azza wa Jal, deceive your customer and client, such that you can make X amount of pounds. Or you take the stance of Nabiullah Yousif and say, As-sijnu ahabbu ilay. Poverty is better for me than to earn that extra 100, 500, 1,000, 5,000 pounds from a manner which is haram. This is applicable to everybody, which is why within our fields, we need to have a certain level of fiqaha. We need to be familiar with the ahkam shar'iyya. Enter janabak as a doctor. Might be a GP. And you are faced with a circumstance or a situation where a customer, a client or a patient comes to you seeking abortion. What is your moral responsibility? What is your religious responsibility? Each and every one of us are faced with such choices on a daily basis. And it is up to us to see whether we are following within the footsteps of the Quran, motivated by Nabi Yousif and Imam Al-Kathim Lola. For like the way Nabi Yousif says, As-sijnu ahabbu ilay, that the prison is much more beloved to me. The same thing Imam Al-Kathim salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi says, for me to be imprisoned is 100 times better, is more beloved to me than to succumb and to attest to the illegitimate authority of Bani Abbas. This persecution and this imprisonment of Imam Al-Kathim, why? All Imam Al-Kathim had to do is go out once in the city of Medina and praise Harun al-Abbasi. And Bain al-Qawsain, between brackets, you find that unfortunately in majority of the books, the title that is given to Harun, the Abbasid ruler, is Harun al-Rashid. Ya Rashid. Rashid from what perspective? La Rashid aslan. From the amount of killings and persecution, Tashayyu has never seen a darker period than the period of Harun. Yet the scholars or the historians come years later and describing as being Harun al-Rashid. Al-Rashid in what basis? On what basis? As we said yesterday, there are many durus akhlaqiyya and nukat i'tiqadiyya that we take as we move on this journey. As we are on this point. Shabab, few months back in one of the airports over here in Europe, within the bookstore, were having a look at some of the books that were there. And there was a section on historical books. And the title of the book was this. Somewhere along these lines. the golden era of Islam under the Umayyad dynasty. The golden era of Islam under the Umayyad dynasty. Yani the golden era of Islam as a result of the rule of Bani Umayyah. These are books that are translated in English and God knows how many other languages. I had to laugh. Yani gharib jiddan, you're promoting books of Bani Umayyah inside of the airport. This is what history has done in terms of manipulating reality. Whose responsibility is it to come up and show the world the truth? So long as you and I are silent, we have given the power of the narrative to the other side. The side of irhab and the side of killings and bloodshed and everything barbaric under the sun. In any case, coming back, Imam Al-Kathim, subject to imprisonment, just like Nabi Yousif, because of the fact that he stood by principle. Imam Al-Kathim, it would not have hurted him. He could have sat back and said, my father As-Sadiq has been poisoned, my father Al-Baqir was poisoned, before that Zayn al-Abidin and the Ma'sat of Karbala. Until when Imam Al-Kathim could have gone out in Medina and would have openly praised Harun al-Abbasi. He could have endorsed their authority in public. He would not have been subject to this imprisonment. In fact, they were waiting for his attestment. Principle. Bani Abbas was not selected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be the khulafa on earth. And Imam Al-Kathim ensured that he did everything within his power through his ilm and the tarbiyah that he gave to his companions and students, that they know that there is only one rightful successor after Rasulullah, and that is Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, and after him the 11 children from his lineage, ending with the awaited Maulana Sahibul Amri was Zaman. For you find in the same way, point number 1 for today, that Nabi Yousif was a prisoner because of ideological principle. You find the same applies for Imam Al-Kathim. However, Ahibbai, there is a big difference in the prison of Nabi Yousif and in the prison of Imam Al-Kathim. In terms of intensity, in terms of persecution. How? Look at, again, we are on Surah Al-Yusuf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in regards to Nabi Yousif, when his brothers were plotting against him, and they threw him into the well. We said yesterday, Nabi Yousif's brothers were jealous of him. And they were jealous of the fact that their father, Nabi Yaqub, loved Yousif more than everybody else. So they plotted a scheme that they will take him out into the deserts or into the plains. They will dash him into a well. And they will put a narrative to the father that Yousif was, alayhi salam, was eaten by a wolf. So look at this situation. When Nabi Yousif was being thrown inside the well. قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ لَا تَقْتُلُوا يُوسُفَ وَأَلْقُوهُ فِي غَيَبَاتِ الْجُبِّ. When the brothers were plotting against him, one of the brothers said, hold on, do not kill Yousif. Do not kill him. Yes, we hate him, but we don't want him dead. Rather, throw him into the depth, into the deepest part of the well. يَلْتَقِطْهُ بَعْضُ السَّيَّارَةِ إِن كُنْتُمْ فَاعِلِينَ. Perhaps there will be a caravan that is passing and they will save him. What we understand from this verse, my brothers and sisters, is that when Nabi Yousif was being thrown inside of the well, there was an element of mercy from his brothers. Yes, they wanted to harm him, but they didn't want to kill him. They still had some sort of affection and mercy for him, which is why one of them said, قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ لَا تَقْتُلُوا يُوسُف. Do not kill him. So, the people who were responsible for throwing Nabi Yousif into the well, evil as they were in their actions, they still had a little bit of mercy inside of their heart. لَا تَقْتُلُوا يُوسُف. Perhaps other people who come may find him and save him and take him. Now compare this with those people who were responsible for the imprisonment of Imam Mousa Al-Kathim. Ani, I ask you, did they have even an ounce of mercy in their heart? Lola. Yousif is put in imprisonment by those who have little bit of affection. Imam Al-Kathim was subject to imprisonment by those who didn't understand the word mercy. Those who were deprived of this emotion of mercy. Men who were beasts to the highest level. Where is the imprisonment of Yousif and where is the imprisonment of Imam Al-Kathim? Not an ounce of mercy by the captives of Imam Al-Kathim, such that the historians mention, and we mentioned this in passing yesterday, Nabi Yousif was thrown at the bottom of the well that was dry. But when he looked up, he was able to see the sunlight. When he looked up, he was able to tell the difference between day and night. Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kathim, in an underground dungeon at Ta'amura, a hole dug within an underground dungeon, a place that was so constricted, they say in military terms, in this day and age, when you subject a prisoner to stress position. Stress position is that you keep your subject or your prisoner in one position, either standing or squatting or sitting for extended hours until the muscles in the body cramp up. And as a result of this, the mind gets disoriented. This is what Imam Al-Kathim was subject to for years on end, not knowing where is day and where is light. One of the times Imam Al-Kathim himself says that Ta'amura, this prison, I was suffocating. Ahibba'i, these are words that are not easy to digest, huh? Sit back and think for yourself. Being subject to a stress position where every muscle in your body is cramped. And on top of that, you are struggling to take breath. What would you do? How would you move? Sit back and think. Imam Al-Kathim says, with difficulty I made my way to the top of the Ta'amura, such that I may take a breath of air. And he says, one of the guards of Harun was standing there. The minute I raised my head, he kicked me across my chest. And on top of that, as we said yesterday in the Na'i, وَشَتَمَا أُمِّي Fatima. Allah. They insulted my mother Fatima. Verbal insults sometimes sting more than the sword or the arrow. Those who imprisoned, those who threw Nabi Yousif in the well had mercy on him. Yes, they hated him, but they had mercy. Imam Al-Kathim didn't have this. His imprisonment was more intense than that of Nabiullah Yousif. One of the times, is mentioned in the books of history, Harun would send the secret service to spy on those prison guards who are in charge of Imam Al-Kathim, persecuting Imam Al-Kathim. Yani, look at the regime of the dictator. You have a spy working from within on your own closest circle to keep an eye on them. So he sends spies, secret service, undercover, to go and keep an eye on the prison guards of Imam Al-Kathim. And Harun's command is this: if you find a prison guard who is lenient towards Imam Al-Kathim, report him to me such that he can be punished. Ajib. It's the level of haqd and bughd within their heart. It's written within the books of history. One prison guard happened to be slightly lenient. Do you know what means slightly? What is the meaning of slightly lenient? The food that was given to Imam Al-Kathim was stale water and stale bread. One piece of stale bread and one glass of stale water. Maulana Babul Hawaij would be for a number of the days in a state of sawm. And this was his iftar. On that particular day, the bread was not stale enough according to their standards to give Imam Al-Kathim. For this, the prison guard was arrested and taken to Harun al-Abbasi for an interrogation. Why did you show such leniency to Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kathim? He said, I wasn't lenient. The bread says a different story. Ajib, ma'kul, the bread was not stale enough to feed the prisoner. The books of history mention for this one act, which according to Harun seemed to be an act of leniency, this man was given 100 lashes. The historians mention after the 100 lashes, the man could not tell where is right and where is left. Compare the intensity of the imprisonment of Nabi Yousif with the imprisonment of Imam Al-Kathim. Where Nabi Yousif, where Imam Al-Kathim? Allah Azza wa Jal praises Nabi Yousif in the Quran, even though Imam Al-Kathim's imprisonment is higher. So if Nabiullah Yousif is praised, then where is the status of Imam Al-Kathim? Taban higher than Nabiullah Yousif. This is one. There was an element of mercy from those who threw Nabi Yousif in the well, in sharp contrast to those who imprisoned Imam Al-Kathim. I give you another example, again from the Quran, that Imam Al-Kathim's imprisonment was more intense than that of Nabiullah Yousif. And let me also make this clear, Akhaf yani, somebody gets the wrong impression that we are trying to put down the position of the Anbiya and raise the status of Ahlul Bayt. We're not putting down the imprisonment of Nabi Yousif. What we're doing is we're trying to understand the intensity of the sufferings incurred by Nabi Yousif and that incurred by Imam Al-Kathim. And Imam Al-Kathim's suffering was far much greater than that of Nabi Yousif. This does not bring down the position of Nabi Yousif, just in case this is misunderstood. Look at what is mentioned within the Quran. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. A second example. When Zulaykha tried to seduce Nabi Yousif, he ran for the door. What we understand from the Quran is that she tried to seduce Nabi Yousif a number of times. She would approach Nabi Yousif a number of times, and every time Nabi Yousif would turn away and say no, and so on and so forth. This time round, which is mentioned in the Quran, when Nabi Yousif refused to engage in this forbidden, illicit relationship, he ran towards the door, or he moved towards the door. And as he moved towards the door, Zulaykha, in a desperate attempt, held on to the shirt of Yousif. So as she grabbed the shirt of Yousif alayhi salam and Yousif ran forward, the shirt tore from the back. And at that point in time, the Aziz of Misr walked in. The ruler of Egypt, who is the husband of Zulaykha. And you can imagine the scene. So Zulaykha straight away blames Nabi Yousif that the servant in the house tried to dishonor me, or the servant in the house tried to initiate an inappropriate relationship. So Zulaykha begins by saying, to cover up her lie, she says to her husband, the Aziz of Misr, that Yousif needs to be punished. Now look at how this is mentioned within the Quran and how it relates to Imam Al-Kathim. She says to him, قالت ما جزاء من أراد بأهلك سوءا. She says to the Aziz of Misr, how will you deal with somebody who tried to do an evil act with your wife? إلا أن يسجن أو عذاب أليم. Zulaykha says she gave the Aziz of Misr straight away two options. She said to him, this Yousif tried to violate my honor. So, as a punishment, he should either be imprisoned, number one, or he should be subjected to some type of torture. Mufassirin of the Quran have said, in the way that Zulaykha says, إِلَّا أَيُّسْجَنْ. Yusjan, he should be imprisoned. In Arabic grammar, fi'l majhul. Fi'l majhul usually denotes light imprisonment. Zulaykha was responsible for Nabi Yousif to go to prison, sahih. But Zulaykha still loved Yousif. She still had affection for Yousif. So when she told Aziz of Misr that send him towards prison, light imprisonment, she didn't say to the Aziz of Misr, have Yousif killed. What does she say? She said two things, either imprisonment or number two, torture. And what is understood is because she loved Yousif, some light type of torture. People forget about this story and things move on. Meaning that the lady responsible for the imprisonment of Nabi Yousif also had an element of mercy, as in sharp contrast to those who were responsible for the imprisonment of Imam Al-Kathim. And then look at what Zulaykha says. Zulaykha commands or instigates the imprisonment of Nabi Yousif for Nabi Yousif himself. She didn't say, because I hold a grudge against him, imprison his father and his brothers. Did she say that? No. Her problem was with Yousif, and hence the imprisonment for Yousif. Now compare this with Bani Abbas and Imam Al-Kathim. Harun al-Abbasi has a problem with Imam Al-Kathim, but he didn't constrain this problem or this issue to the imprisonment of Imam Al-Kathim. Rather, he vented out his anger and hatred on the entire family of Imam Al-Kathim. There is a big difference in the imprisonment of Nabi Yousif and the imprisonment of Imam Al-Kathim by Bani Abbas. Zulaykha and the Aziz, evil as the action was, had an element of mercy within them. Bani Abbas didn't even have this mercy. Zulaykha constricted the punishment to Yousif as Yousif. Bani Abbas did not constrict the imprisonment to Imam Al-Kathim, but rather to all the children of Ali and Fatima at that time, the Sada, Hassani and Hussainis. Which one was more intense in history? The historians mention the Sada, honorable children from the lineage of Ali and Fatima. The worst times that they went through during Bani Abbas. Leave mass genocide of Shias. we have seen in our lifetime mass genocide of Shias. An example, what happened in Camp Spiker years ago, what happened in Iraq, what continues to happen inside of Afghanistan, inside of Nigeria, and where. Targeted killings of Shias, of followers of Ahlul Bayt. And this was something that happened from the time of Saqifa. Targeted killings of the followers of Ahlul Bayt. But during the time of Harun, it was stepped up a notch higher. It was not only targeted killing of Shias, Ahibba'i, it was targeted killing of Sada. Children from the lineage of Ali and Fatima. Our respected Sadat who are sitting in the majalis. And I'm in no position to say this. When you wear your green scarves on your shoulder, wear it with pride and honor. I don't say pride and honor by way of takabbur, la. This is a sign of your identity, an identity that has survived persecution and genocide for over 1400 years. And the custom on the mimbar of Imam Hussein, the persecution through which tashayyu has gone through, in itself is a dalil that we are on the right path. Because if there was any other madhab, any other faith and any other religion that was exposed to the same persecution in the way that we have been subjected to, that faith would, its remembrance aslan would have been removed from the face of this earth. There would not even be a trace of that. The whole world was against tashayyu. Still today the dhikr of Amirul Mu'mineen and Aliyun Waliyullah from the Adhan emanates in every corner of the earth. فَأَنْتُمْ Sada. Responsibility through your actions, without doubt, everybody. So when you wear these scarves, these are marks of honor that point towards a legacy. Historians mention on one night, one of the wuzara of Harun. This is when Imam Al-Kathim was in imprisonment. And you know, Imam Al-Kathim was in imprisonment for an extended period of time. 20 odd years in multiple prisons between Basra and Baghdad and so on and so forth. The imprisonment in Baghdad, in the prison of Sindi, Al-La'in was only one of many other prisons that he was subject to. However, on the issue of the Sada, so you understand the intensity of the imprisonment that Imam Al-Kathim was subject to was much more harsher than that of Nabiullah Yousif. The prison guard himself says, one of the narrator, the Rawi, mentions that I went to visit this Fulan Wazir, governor or minister of Harun in Shahrul Ramadan, in the middle of the afternoon, time of Salatul Dhuhr. I go to visit him in his house and I saw that this wazir, this minister, is sitting down and the sufra is being laid in front of him and he's eating. Ajib. He said, he sat down and the wazir offered him food. He said to him, I'm fasting and I don't have a reason to do iftar. I'm not sick, I'm not a traveler, this, that, what not. And he said, perhaps you are eating because you are not feeling well. Husnul dhan, like the way they say, make 70 excuses for your brother. This wazir replies by saying that it's not that I'm sick and it's not that I'm exempt from fasting, but I don't see any benefit in fasting anymore. Allah. What do you mean? He says, no matter how much I fast and no matter how much I pray, I know it's of no benefit for me. The sins that I've committed in my life are so great that even if I was to fast my entire life, it would not help me. Ajib. What sin is this? He asks him, what did you do in your life such that you've reached to such a level? The wazir says, understand the people who imprisoned Imam Al-Kathim. And compare this with the imprisonment of Nabiullah Yousif. He says, on one night Harun calls me to the palace. I'm his governor. In the middle of the night I'm summoned. He says, as I'm summoned over there, Harun asks me, how loyal are you towards me? He replies back to Harun and he says, with all my wealth and all my life I am loyal to you. Yani my entire existence is up to you. Shufu. See, these are lessons which you can even identify tyrants in this day and age. When a leader, non-ma'asum tab'an, the ma'asum are a different bracket, it's outside. When a non-ma'asum, a non-infallible, a fallible person in a position of leadership requires from you unconditional support or unconditional obedience, understand that this is the first and the greatest sign of a taghi, of a dhalim. Shunu unconditional authority or submission. These are people, they had to sell their existence to the ruler. Khalas ba'd. There was nothing they could do. They had no element of free will in their life. So Harun says, how loyal are you to me? He says, with my life and my wealth and my health and my family and madri shu. Harun says to him, take the sword and follow this God of mine, and tonight we shall test your loyalty. The wazir says that I entered into a house. In the middle of the house there was a veranda. In the middle of the house there was a well. There was a well in the middle of the house in the veranda. And this veranda opened up to 3 different rooms. 3 different doors leading to 3 different rooms. He says, I went with this man and there's a sword in my hand. Harun is testing my loyalty. I'm a wazir in his government, huh? He says, I entered, I was shown into the first room. The door was opened and he says, I saw 20 men, women, elders and children tied up in ropes, having been deprived of any type of food or water for God knows how many days. The command has come from Harun al-Abbasi that these people need to be executed and killed today. He says, I feared when I looked at them. He said, when I asked about their identity, I was told all of them are the Sada from the children of Ali and Fatima. Sada, understand when you wear this green scarf around your shoulder. For us, non-Sada, to respect the Sada in that sense. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. When Allah said this siddiq, do you know for this kawthar in terms of lineage what they went through? He says, I brought each and every one of them to the courtyard. I beheaded them with my swords while the other person kept throwing their bodies into the well. We finished one room and was led to a second room and to a third room. In one night, 60 men, women, children from the children of Ali and Fatima were beheaded and their bodies thrown into a well for no crime that they have done except that they have loyalty to Babul Hawaij, Imam Mousa ibn Ja'far al-Kathim. These were the times in which Imam Al-Kathim lived. These were the type of people that Imam Al-Kathim was imprisoned by. In one night, this man himself says, the last person that I was going to behead was a person who was old in age and his back was bent. He looked at me with tears flowing down his face. As I got ready to raise my sword such that I may behead him, he turned towards me, and do you know what is the last words that he said to me? He said to me, oh man, how will you face my grandfather Rasulullah on the day of judgment? These were the last words before he was executed and his headless body thrown into a well. Where is the imprisonment of Imam Al-Kathim and where is the imprisonment of Nabi Yousif? And the reality of the matter is that because the daraja of Nabi Yusuf, because the daraja of Imam Al-Kathim is higher than the daraja of Nabi Yusuf. This is why the imtihan and the persecution of Imam Al-Kathim was much more intense than that of Nabi Yusuf. And this is the Quran for you to read, ya ahibba'i, and understand the of Imam Al-Kathim from the story of Nabi Yusuf within the Quran. This is the meaning of this hadith of Rasulullah that we said yesterday. Inni tarikun fikum uthiqlain kitabullahi wa itrati. Learn about the itra from the Quran itself. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Our time is almost over and there is much to say in this regards. We will suffice for today, and I know you have a 3-night program. Tomorrow night there is a recitation of the Maktal by the Mullah, and I have a different recitation in the city of Leicester. Inshallah, Tatimmat al-Bahath, the completion of this Bahath will be tomorrow in Leicester. For those of you who are interested to follow the lecture, we are also grateful for Imam Hussein Media Group and Imam Hussein TV 3 that broadcast these lectures. Those of you who are interested may be able to follow this on Imam Hussein TV. Before I go into the Masa'ib as well, it's my responsibility to thank the Sadah and the organizers of the Majlis over here in Diwan al-Kafil for this great effort that they have undergone to put together 3 nights for Imam Al-Kathim. I have not seen any other center in London uphold the dhikr for 3 nights for Imam Al-Kathim. فَهَنِيًا لَكُمْ. And I pray for the organizers of this majlis at this Husayniyah Al-Mubarakah, Diwan Al-Kafil, and for each and every one of you who have come to honor Imam Al-Kathim, that may you be protected from every type of su and bala, and insha'Allah by the grace of Imam Al-Kathim, all your hajat and du'as are accepted. In the dunya, insha'Allah, you are blessed with the ziyarah of Imam Al-Kathim, and in the akhirah, insha'Allah, the shafa'ah of Imam Al-Kathim, with the barakat of Allah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ahibba'i, the tragedy of Imam Al-Kathim. Tomorrow, inshallah, is the recitation of the full Maktal by the Mullah. Tonight, like yesterday, we will take certain parts of the tragedy of Imam Al-Kathim and relate it back to Karbala. Imam Al-Kathim, despite his imprisonment, played a great role in providing tarbiyah to the Shia when it came to commemorating Ashura and when it comes to commemorating the grief of Imam al-Hussein. This in itself is a historical study on its own. But suffices it for us to know that there is not a single day from his life that passed except that Imam al-Kathim wept over the tragedy of Imam al-Hussein. See, Ahibba'i, when Nabi Yousif was removed from prison, he was brought in front of the masses dressed as a king with a crown on his head. Allah, how was Nabi Musa, or how was Imam Mousa Al-Kathim removed from the prison? A dead body that was shackled in chains. The narrations mention that when Harun al-Abbasi had Imam al-Kathim poisoned, the effect of the poison was such that the Imam's complexion had changed, moving towards the right and moving towards the left. There are 2 parts of Imam al-Kathim where his tragedy is similar to that of Imam al-Hussein. The narrations mention that while he was in the prison, the effect of the poison was so intense that Imam al-Kathim suffered from extreme thirst towards the final moments of his life. Turning towards the right, turning towards the left. This is Maulana Imam Mousa ibn Ja'far crying crying out like his uncle, like his grandfather, Imam Al-Hussein, feeling the pangs of thirst. And at this point, the cries of the children comes into mind when they cried out, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. This is Imam Al-Hussein in Karbala, who is being martyred and slaughtered while he's thirsty. And over here in the prisons of Baghdad, we have Imam Al-Kathim spending the final moments of his life without any water. Allah, Imam Al-Kathim left this dunya while he was thirsty due to the intensity of the poison. The historians mention that when the people had ascertained and they were sure that Imam Al-Kathim has died, they took the body of Imam Al-Kathim from the prison, a dead body. The legs were shackled in chains, the hands were shackled with chains. They took the body and they left the body of Imam Al-Kathim on the bridge of Baghdad for 3 days under the scorching heat. The body of Imam Al-Kathim without a ghusl and a kafan. The people of Bani Abbas and the prisoners standing on the bridge, some of them kicking the body of Imam Al-Kathim, all of them crying out, this is the Imam of the Rafidah. This is the Imam of the people who thinks that he was selected by Allah. Wa Imamah, O Imam Al-Kathim, in the way that your body was left 3 days unburied on the bridge of Baghdad, my heart travels towards Karbala. Karbala. Allah, this is the body of Imam Al-Hussein left on the plains without a ghusl and a kafan. But in what state was the body of Abu Abdullah Al-Hussein? A body where every bone was broken when the horses trampled upon it. I end the Masa'ib with this part. On the 13th of Muharram, Imam Sajjad comes back to Karbala to bury Imam Al-Hussein. Bani Asad and the people of Bani Asad are watching. They helped bury the companions, but when it came to Imam Al-Hussein, Imam Sajjad said, I shall bury him by myself. The grave was already dug where you see it. The historians, it is mentioned within the Maqatil that the grave of Imam Al-Hussein was dug by Rasulullah himself. Imam Sajjad mentions that I went towards the body of my father Abu Abdullah. I tried to lift the body such that I may place my father Imam Al-Hussein into the qabr, into the grave. He says, I tried to lift the body from the right side, but I couldn't. Imam Sajjad sat down. He went around and tried to lift the body of Imam Al-Hussein from the left side. He couldn't. He sat down. The people of Bani Abbas came forward and said, Ya Zayn al-Abidin, is the body of Imam Al-Hussein so heavy that you cannot lift it? Imam Sajjad began to weep and cry. He said, La wallah, it is not that the body was heavy and it is not that I am weak, but the manner in which this body has been trampled by horses. If I lift the body from the left side, the right side of the body falls over. If I lift the body from the right side, the left side of the body falls over. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. We pray to Allah Azza wa Jal by the Sheikh of Imam Al-Kathim. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Imam Al-Hujjah. Ya Allah, by the Sheikh of Imam Al-Kathim, Mu'mineen and Mu'minat who have gathered here today, forgive us our sins on a night like this and enable us to be from amongst the Ansar and the Ashab of Imam Al-Hujjah. Ya Allah, all our family members and friends who have passed away and are no longer in the dunya with us, you make their graves into a garden from the gardens of Jannah by the Sheikh of Imam Al-Kathim. Ya Allah, All our brothers and sisters who are not in the best of health, you grant them ease and you cure them in the fastest of times. Ahibai, we also have a request that we have one of our brothers, Brother Mahmoud Al-Layar, who has a brain tumor, I believe, and he's in need of dua. On this night of Imam Al-Kathim, with your tears rolling down, and from the member of Imam Al-Hussein, for this boy, if we can all get together 5 times to recite the Ayatul Shifa'ah, and for all those who are not in the best of health, inshallah, by the grace of Imam Al-Kathim, may they gain cure. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء عما يجيب عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. May Allah, through Imam Al-Kathim, cure this young boy and every one of us whose family members, ourselves, who are not in the best of health. May all your hajat be accepted. يقول الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.